GPS jamming was used. Drivers report fake checkpoints.
Cargo crime costs businesses billions of dollars a year in losses, disrupting global supply chains and putting client relationships at risk. But 25 years ago, one group of industry leaders said enough is enough and have been reducing their risk ever since. So, who are they? What do they know? What's their secret? And how can they help you? Welcome to TAPA Talks. In each episode, our hosts Thorsten Neumann and Pauly share a unique insight into the workings of the world's leading supply chain resilience industry association and talk to supply chain and security specialists about current and emerging threats out on the front line as they tackle everything from violent organized crime groups to insider thefts by their own employees. TAPA, it's time to talk.
Welcome back to TAPA Talks, the podcast where we discuss the key topics impacting supply chain resilience and cargo security across Europe, the Middle East and Africa. With me, Pauly.
And me, Thorsten Neumann.
Now, a recent Europol report has highlighted how criminal networks are becoming more agile, more digital and more opportunistic, exploiting legitimate business systems and technology to carry out their activities. In logistics, we're seeing that trend through the growing threat of fake carriers, freight fraud, and fraudulent pickups.
Yeah, that's right, Sam. But the industry is fighting back. And in this episode, we look at how companies can better understand these evolving threats, the warning signs to watch out for, and practical advice and tips to help avoid becoming a victim. And we'll also explore how collaboration, verification, and trusted carrier networks are becoming essential tools in protecting supply chains.
So, Thorsten, we have lots to discuss today. And to help us do that then, and look at these challenges and the new collaboration between TAPA, EMEA and Trans.eu on the Certified Carrier Exchange, I'm delighted to welcome our guest for today, Matt Arendas, Vice President, Partnerships at Trans.eu Group. Matt, hi, thank you so much for being with us today.
Hello, Sam and Thorsten. Thanks for having me.
So I wonder if we can start out maybe to set the scene a little bit. Thorsten, perhaps you could give us a bit of background on the sort of the market challenges and the perception. In Europe, how significant is freight fraud and the threats that are posed by fake carriers?
If you look at the situation, right now and over the last couple of years, freight fraud and fake carriers is really an increasing threat. It's also a very, market-driven, but also marketing-driven threat because it's right now mentioned everywhere. Everybody is saying, oh, fake carriers are going through the roof. This is already the situation over the last 20 years. So as you know, TAPA always said, never use freight exchange platforms because they are completely unsecured. Don't do it. It's not a good idea because you give something into a hand, you have no clue who's behind that. We do see that the numbers are really more stable, but they always been high, but now, and that's the great news, more and more people are actively engaged fighting against fake carriers.
And Matt, how are organised crime groups or OCGs facilitating these types of crimes, and are AI tools making it even easier for them to achieve this?
Yeah, so fake carriers and all of this fraud that can take place has been taking place for 20 years. And this has been, very much from the days of being able to photocopy an insurance certificate, generate fake websites, and maybe have a friend call in as a fake reference when establishing identities. What we see in the era of generative AI is an acceleration or sophistication of very similar methods. So instead of spending time making those fake IDs, now you can generate one online. Instead of having a friend call in to be a reference, you can use an AI agent to do it. This has helped enable some maybe new entrants, let's say, less savvy criminals who have not previously attempted to steal freight, get in the market and become an attempt to access within. And so within this, what we see is not necessarily that the sophistication or the methods of entrance change due to AI, but rather it's the volume. So we see that there are more people interested in using this technology to gain entrance into secure systems, do business with real people, and be able to access that through their AI solutions. So what we see is that there's really a critical need for independent private and public verification of identities and of users that you do business with. So it's really important when you're accessing or working with new companies that you can use government databases or a trusted party like TAPA to validate that the people you're doing business with are in fact real. And that we also feel that AI agents being used for fraud must also be a part of the solution. So we use opposing AI agents to be able to understand the usage and some of the risks that take place within this. And so we see that it's strengthening both sides of the equation, a higher velocity of AI theft attempts, but a higher defense of AI agents defending as well.
And Thorsten, maybe reflecting on what Matt has just said, in terms of freight fraud, how much of it is because OCGs are working in these ways that Matt's just outlined, or how much of it is down to the sheer lack of due diligence by companies who are handing over their goods?
Yeah, I think first of all, Matt really hit the nail on the head here. What is quite important is that over the last couple of years, not only technology is changing, okay, OCGs are adjusting significantly. And whilst companies and the industry is using AI and modern technology on a way where we follow, ethics and we follow, code of conducts and everything, but the OCGs are not doing that. So what is quite important is 10 years ago, you needed a developer to create a fake website. Nowadays, AI will create you a fake website in seconds. And as Matt also already said, this is really what people need to understand. I think it's not really fair to say that there's a sheer lack of due diligence by companies. I think what is more important to say is it's very difficult sometimes to really follow the speed criminals, really do have. Because as I said, we are in our daily routine, we follow all the principles, we follow processes, we follow procedures. Whilst OCGs are only looking at, okay, what is the best opportunity, in the shortest period of time with the biggest outcome. And they use everything we use on the way to always find the weakest link within our supply chain, our processes.
And of course, Thorsten, in a supply chain world, everyone's looking for the lowest price or the quickest way to move goods. Are businesses that fail to recognize these risks easy prey for crime groups then?
Yeah, that's clearly one of the reasons. I think what is also quite important, historically, the logistics world is always working on a low margin, which is giving always criminals a great opportunity to really to look at the weakest link. And when you can save money, you try to save money. And we as TAPA, with a 26 years historical experience, we can give you millions of examples where a company is trying to save 20 euro and at the end of the day, they lost 20 million, and that's really quite important. Sometimes it's really better to look at the right mix between people and technology. And what we always say is, create awareness, train your people, because in many cases, create a mindset change is the key to success here. And that's really something what is quite important.
I think also, Thorsten, that supply chain professionals can do everything right 99 times out of 100 or 999 times out of 1,000. But when the pressure grows, whether that's for a very short lead shipment, whether there's a really big cost pressure for them to be under, it only takes one mistake to create an entry vector for a criminal to be able to access it. So for us, and when we go ahead and help our customers and help TAPA members fight this type of fraud, it's important that we create a locked environment where error is not an option. For that one edge case out of 1,000, where the system needs to catch you if your internal process or internal structure isn't set up to do it for those final edge cases.
Do you know where your supply chains face the greatest risks of a criminal attack? TAPA EMEA's digital intelligence system is updated daily and contains over 275,000 incidents in over 100 countries. Don't stay in the dark. Intelligence equals resilience. It's time to become TAPAized.
And Matt, by your own admission, or Trans.eu's own admission, Trans.eu Group rejects 2 out of every 3 carriers during vetting. Presumably you don't consider these all to be fake carriers though. So have you had incidences where you've detected organized crime groups trying to find a way in?
Yeah, so for Trans.eu, 2 out of 3 applicants do not enter our platform. And we often validate that the majority of these applicants are real companies doing real business, but we set a threshold and a standard required in order to be a part of the exchange. So within our exchange, we're typically gathering 3 types of information. The first is basic company information. This is self-reported, like company name, who the owner is, address, VAT, maybe some insurance documentation. This can all be validated against external sources, but at the end of the day, this is where often that first initial fake ID or fake carrier is generated. Very easy to catch. We see an increase in number of potential applicants from fraud, but they're at this point in time very manageable to be able to understand against and contextualized against external data sources. The second piece where we start to capture some of these more complex cases is as we build identity profiles for each company that we do business with. So we understand the domain that they function from, their own website. Has it recently been purchased or sold? Is it a brand new website in the last 6 months? Are there transfers of the company? Is there changes in the ownership? Each of our users on our platform, we have over 120,000 users within our exchange. Each of them requires two-factor authentication to be able to access that platform. And so, as you can imagine, when we create this type of structure, we can see when anomalies take place. If suddenly a company changes all their passwords, changes the phone numbers they do two-factor authentication with, they may be doing some types of changes from the IP addresses or mobile phones that access it. It's an immediate, glaring, and obvious red flag on our side. So these types of identity profiles that we create in these digital fingerprints help us understand what companies might be changing, what companies may have been taken over, or that there's risk. So this is maybe a little bit more of a sophistication that we see. The final piece, and where we really push the boundary for security, is the most secure freight exchange in Europe, is for the advanced criteria that we access. So for each company that enters our exchange, we're looking for advanced information. We're looking for references from people who have done business with this potential carrier. These are people who are active and users on our exchange already. This is independent companies that we can verify. And we take a look and we see if the company has any outstanding bad debts. We're taking a look to see if a company is returning from a hiatus, if they haven't been active on the exchange for 1 year, and they come back and they re-enter. For us, that's a requirement to redo the due diligence that's already taken place. We're always taking a look to understand the usage patterns so that way customers on our exchange can be safe, be understood, and it gives us really a lot of information to deeply evaluate and identify red flags. And so within this, we continue to push the bar up in terms of what is acceptable on our exchange. You have to be in business for over a year in order to be a member. We like to see real users who have moved real freight, and we like to ensure that that is the bar that we set. Certainly some frustration for those who wish to join and do business quickly, but for us, security is our top importance. And that means that at times we do have to be quite strict on our entrance criteria, and it's important that we keep the bar high.
Thorsten, Matt has just given us a snapshot really of the sheer scale of the operations and the volume of transactions. It's often described, therefore, with that sheer scale as a perfect hunting ground for fake carriers. But is there any evidence to support this perception?
Oh, we have tons of evidence. If you look at the TIS numbers, if you look at our numbers related to, where fake carriers been involved in, as you also know, we are working very closely together with Europol and more than 300 police agencies or contacts within Europe, and what we always hear is, we need to do something against the fake carriers. It's getting crazy and crazy and crazy. But I think what is quite important, as you said it, it's really, if you look at the transactions, if you look at the volume, and what we need to understand also as the industry is, when we would like to win and when we would like to connect the dots here, what we need to do is we need to work together with them. And that's exactly the reason why we started the discussions with Trans.eu and why we now came with the certified carrier exchange platform, because this is exactly how you can connect the dots and mitigate the risk for the entire industry.
And I think, Thorsten, when we look at the landscape across Europe, my perspective would be that poorly guarded freight exchanges with weak security are great places for bad actors to attempt theft. But when you look at extremely secure exchanges, they're incredibly frustrating environments to attempt fraud in. We see and we share information with other exchanges in Europe to root out some of these actors who do attempt fraud in multiple exchanges. And we can see that they're attempting, hundreds of times the same user, the same IP, the same phone number again and again and again. And I can imagine that there's a great deal of frustration on their end. But I think painting with a really broad brush, you could say it could be a hunting ground if it's a weak exchange. But secure exchanges are a very safe place to be able to do that type of business. If you think back to all the documents that we create and require in order to do business, the amount of effort it takes to put together all of that, as soon as we're able to reject that, we can track and monitor that type of attempt again in the future. And so that really thwarts a lot of efforts that we see, at least within Trans.eu, as a vector of attack. I think more broadly, the perception of freight exchanges make a lot of sense, because when at least we consider the full freight life cycle, theft can take place, Thorsten, as you know, in every single step. So from the beginning, when you're sending that shipment to the first carrier, whether it be, it's a new carrier that you're doing business with, you're sending these orders for the first time, theft can take place there. It can also be planted warehouse workers, dispatchers, and drivers who are compromised within the journey itself. And then there can be just full-blown physical attacks that take place en route. If you take a look at those kind of latter physical attempts, it's very, very difficult to say, hey, let's stop that, because those are going to be from so many actors that are very difficult to plan for if you're not using the TAPA certification standards. But it's very easy to say, hey, there are 10 or 15 exchanges in Europe. There's a risk vector. Let's just stop all potential risk there. It's easier for a security manager to say that than it is to help maybe fight for some of those downstream risk efforts that are much more difficult to prevent.
Thorsten, do you think that the criticism that does come for freight exchanges and their security vetting lapses is fair then, given the absolute scale of the amount of exchanges that they're processing, 10 million plus loads offers a month? Is that criticism really fair, do you think?
It's 100% fair, because there's one point which is quite important, it's really the users needs to understand the risk. And that's really quite important. And that's the reason why TAPA was saying for more than 20 years, don't use the freight exchange platforms, because, the only thing what they do is, they sell the load to someone, who is then taking over, potentially a high value load. So that's the reason why with the new platform, what we say now is really listen, learn, and leverage the new platform, understand it. And what is quite important also, when we say, for example, don't use a freight exchange platform, now we are saying, think about it to use it, but think about it on a different way, because don't use a normal freight exchange platform, use a secure freight exchange platform. And also for this, it will take a while. We had a lot of discussions, with our members, and some members immediately jumped in and said, that's a perfect thing, and I will start immediately to do that. But others, and a good example is the tobacco industry. It's very difficult for a tobacco industry to say, okay, now I can use freight exchange, because for 20 years, it was always clearly an instruction to never, ever use freight exchange because you give it out of your hand. But this is also something what is up to us now to really educate the people, to educate the industry. And of course, at the end of the day, show the industry that there is something what can mitigate your risk to a level what you also do right now with your direct partners. Because the good news is everything what we do in the certified carrier exchange is certified. And this is the key word. It's not compliant or something like that. It's a certified carrier exchange platform. So at the end of the day, of course, we are not saying, use it for everything. But now you have an opportunity to use it also for high value items and high risk commodities.
And we'll talk in more detail about the certified carrier exchange in just a moment. But just before we do move on to that, we say there's no guarantee of 100% security in anything. So what advice would you give to businesses sourcing transport capacity through a freight exchange, and maybe split that through a certified carrier exchange that we'll be talking about, or more generally? Thorsten, and I'll come to you and then let you hand over to Matt.
Yeah, I think, as I already said, I think it's first of all, it's important, that you need to understand, what is your risk? What kind of products are you carrying? What is the route? Because there's also, of course, there's a major difference, if you have a transport within Germany or if you cross border. And that's really quite important. And at the end of the day, when you have the entire picture, and that's the big point, you need to understand the big picture. You need to understand the risk for your products. And then you need to make a decision to say, yep, it makes sense to use a freight exchange or a certified freight exchange, yes or no. In the world we are in right now, it's very easy, you must use it, at the end of the day, but What is super important is really to mitigate the risk, use what is there in the industry. There's no need to reinvent the wheel. Everything is there nowadays.
And I think it's most important when you start working with a freight exchange that you take time to work directly with that exchange and learn from them. You want to work with freight exchanges that are willing to show you how their security works, what type of business they're doing. If you meet with the freight exchange and they say, we have a magic formula that's behind the curtain over here that catches fraud all the time, and it's great. We can't show you it's proprietary, but it's really strong. That would be a red flag. But if you can work with the freight exchange who says, hey, we have a 64-page security documentation here at Trans.eu, and we share it directly with security professionals at our customers to say, here is every single edge case, every single obligation that we take on to ensure that freight is moved safely within the exchange. Come meet with our teams. If you feel that something's missing, we'll include it. We have a very active and externally facing security group to ensure that we can continue to meet customers where they need to be. With tobacco, for example, we collaborate to help maybe set some additional standards within our exchange so that way they can move from just having the raw materials within the certified carrier exchange into maybe some finished goods to help kind of raise the bar and push the limits of what is possible within one. But I think the key within this is just that there's a deep sense of collaboration. The team in a freight exchange should be available to answer questions and ensure that you're in a position to leverage the best practice within the industry. My additional advice to achieve that kind of guarantee or target of 100% security is when you use a freight exchange, ensure that you as a user are sticking to your standard onboarding and best practices and the SOPs that you write with your security teams. It's fundamental that these don't go out the window just because it's 4 p.m. on a Friday. You need to cover the load. You're on an exchange. You're really under that pressure. That would be the worst time to limit usage of all of that work your teams have done so far. So if you can collaborate with an exchange, if you can stick to the best practices you have as a business, you're in a really exceptional way in terms of progress towards that 100% security guarantee.
Did you know over 75% of cargo thefts in the EMEA region involve attacks on trucks? That's why transport and logistics providers operating tens of thousands of trucks in over 30 countries use TAPA's trucking security requirements. They're driving supply chain resilience. Are you?
I think the key message you were giving there, Matt, is collaboration. So let's talk about that collaboration, because TAPA EMEA and Trans.eu just last month announced that they are partnering to create the certified carrier exchange that we've been alluding to. So this might have come as a surprise to some. Can you tell us why you're doing it? You've touched on that already a little bit, but really what it's going to mean in terms of greater supply chain security and how unique this is.
It's the first one, so that's how unique it is, So, and it took really longer than we all thought, So as we announced in Oberhausen, it took us 18 months because we had a lot of discussions and we have a lot of, very intense discussions in reference to, okay, how can we really ensure that it is a certified carrier exchange? So what can we do to make it as strong as possible? And yeah, I hope it was a surprise because this is also what TAPA is known for. You really to come with something what nobody is expecting. But at the end of the day, we always really been here to do the best for our members and to provide our members the best from an industry point of view. What TAPA is always saying, when we talk about mitigating the risks and when we talk about standards and some of the solutions and everything, everything should come from the industry for the industry. And with more than 1,100 corporate members, in Europe, Middle East, and Africa alone, I think, the best is, to learn and listen to these 1,100 member companies and really understand what they need. And this is something what they need.
And I think that over the last 18 months, this collaboration with Thorsten and the team has really pushed the upper limit of what security can mean within a freight exchange and really magnified the power of the security protocol that both TAPA and Trans.eu bring to market. I think within the 1,100 TAPA members, there were already 185 Trans.eu customers. So of course, for that non-high value business, many customers are conducting business on the exchange. But in order to meet the standards of TAPA, to meet the standards of the industry, and to push to the highest limits, we've spent time to make sure that only the most secure companies are able to access a very, very exclusive capacity. So within this, the premise of the certified carrier exchange is that we've taken our existing exchange, which has 30,000 carriers on it, and we've created a separate private exchange in parallel. And within this private exchange, the only carriers who can access it are TSR1 carriers and TSR2 carriers. This means we've shrunk from 30,000 into just 200 carriers who are a potential to be a member of it. Within this means that if you are comfortable doing business with TAPA carriers, then these are the only carriers who are available within the exchange. And so for those TSR certified carriers who have made the investment, they have their trailers ready, they can follow the protocol, they now can find a way to do new business with shippers, forwarders, and logistics service providers who are seeking the highest level of security transport in Europe. Within this, for those who are shippers, forwarders, and logistics service providers, there's an opportunity here for them to access maybe a new carrier, a carrier that is outside of their existing contracted base, which means that for when there's a additional peak season flow, a new warehouse opening, or just maybe the existing carrier capacity can't cover a load, it's the perfect time to be able to use the exchange to locate a new carrier who's fully certified and vetted by TAPA and Trans.eu to move those goods. It helps kind of accelerate the onboarding process and build initial digital trust, which can then be collaborated on and even further, both within the platform and outside the platform. I think the fundamental change that we've made this year is that we've integrated TAPA's TSR certifications directly in the platform. So that means if you're a TSR certified carrier, you can proudly show within the exchange your badge that you're certified by TAPA. And for those who are looking to do business with you, they can validate the credentials, the expiration date, and the validity of the certificate, and the type of business you're approved to do. And so within this, this means that these companies are able to do more secure business directly on the exchange in a closed, verifiable environment. What we heard often is that the amazing conferences that TAPA puts on are the right place to meet carriers, but you can only attend so many TAPA conferences on an annual basis. There's 3 or 4 a year, including the regional events. And that means that there's a lot of time in between where a carrier may be needed that you aren't able to meet in person. And so this gives a chance to start that collaboration directly online and in a secure environment with verified identities, verified companies, all while demonstrating their TAPA certification.
And Matt, just a few more questions on the sort of practicalities and the functionality of it. Can anybody access that, or how does that work in terms of who's able to access the exchange from the shippers and forwarders, but also, kind of what costs are involved as well?
Yeah, so the exchange functions, the invitation functions on both sides in a different way. So the only carriers, capacity providers who can be involved are those who hold valid TSR 1 and 2 certifications. When it comes to shippers and forwarders who are searching for capacity, you don't have to be a TAPA member. It's initially built for our TAPA membership, but what we found is that there are companies who are seeking carriers who can deliver the highest security standards in Europe who want to be a part of the exchange. So it's by invitation, and we can be in touch with those who are most interested in this type of solution. So we have a sign-up flow that's available for them to indicate interest directly on our website for them to do it. And this means that anyone can access this exclusive pool of high security capacity. But they need to still go through the standard onboarding verification that they are in fact a load provider who can meet the criteria of our exchange. And as it stands now, we've only invited from our customer base, our top shippers and our top freight forwarders. This is not something that we've just opened up to the broader exchange pool customers that we have today. And so as we begin, it's those who are willing to pay a premium for access to the best carriers in Europe. Now, in terms of the price for a load provider, whether that be a shipper, freight forwarder, or logistics service provider, I think it's 299 euros per month. And if you're a carrier, it's 175 euros per month. That is the license for the company. As Thorsten and I developed this solution, the goal here is to add value to TAPA's membership. We want to be in a position where this is accessible to companies to help kind of fight against this risk of doing business with new entities. And so we've intentionally structured it so that way it's quite accessible for these companies to access it. And we'll continue to maintain pricing so it's available to the majority of companies looking for secure transport in Europe.
Matt, having announced the exchange in Oberhausen, as we mentioned earlier at the TAPA EMEA annual conference, what response have you received so far? How many TAPA certified carriers have already signed up and shippers and forwarders? What kind of response have you been getting? And have you been surprised by that?
Yeah, I think that the positive response has been quite overwhelming. We announced in the conference in the middle of June, and when we launched the exchange on the 1st of July, we already had 100 companies signed up. It was actually about 98 to be specific. So it's about an even split between TSR carriers and those who are shippers and forwarders searching for capacity. But to have so much engagement already within the first 2 weeks, it's been a really strong signal from the market. And within the first week of the exchange, we already had almost 5,000 loads posted, and we had hundreds of transactions that have taken place. So this is a really strong indicator that people are interested in the solution, interested in these trusted carriers. And what we're finding within the exchange is it's now live, and it gives us some context, is that people are posting both TAPA freight, so those that require TSR certifications, in addition, which means that the trust that we're building with these TAPA members is strong. And it's also the freight that doesn't require a TAPA certification. And so this may be for companies who just want to work with a very trusted pool of carriers who've demonstrated that they're willing to make the commitments necessary for strong security transport. And so for some of the carriers, they're working already with new customers who both require TSR certifications, and maybe those who don't require TSR certifications. So it's helping diversify some of the business and usage of the assets that we have, but it's been a very strong start, and we continue to see double-digit signups on a weekly basis as we continue to grow. I think then there's always more TAPA members that Thorsten and I meet with who have positive indications that this is the right solution for them. So slowly and surely it continues to grow, but really quite overwhelmed by a positive result here to begin.
TAPA's FSR security standard protects logistics facilities in 70 countries in the EMEA region. Designed by the industry, for the industry, FSR reduces risk and builds resilience. It's the supply chain security standard your customers want you to achieve. Isn't it time your facilities were TAPA certified?
Thorsten, it must have been, as you said, you hoped it was a surprise. I'm sure it was a surprise to many members. A new direction, really, to be taking. What feedback have you been getting?
The feedback overall, especially after we just jumped from the stage, was amazing. A lot of really TAPA members, long-term TAPA members, came to me and they said, Thorsten, this is an amazing idea, and we will jump on it. And hearing now and listening to the numbers Matt just shared with us, I must say, it's another amazing example of TAPA innovation and collaboration. And at the end, like I can only say, it's really more to come, and that's really quite important. If you know TAPA, if you know also myself over the last 26 years, everything what we do is not a race. There's no finish line. And yes, we kicked off this freight exchange platform, and I can promise you, and that's very important, we are still in nearly daily contact with Trans.eu, because what we need to see now is, so how is it now to use it? What do we need to learn? What do you need to adjust? How can we make it easier or even stronger? And that's really quite important. But I love to hear that it's really becoming a success. And as I said, I'm pretty sure that more will come also from a TAPA point of view.
Talk about constantly learning, Thorsten. Matt, have there been any key learnings during the process of development?
Yeah, I think that the most important piece for us as we get users live and active is just comfort in using an exchange. So it's a lot of hand-holding. We have 5 or 6 people who have individually spoken to every customer who has become a part of the solution. And so there's a lot of trepidation around making sure that there's the right information posted, that their security requirements can be met. And I think some of the quick learnings that we've had is maybe there's a fear that freight exchanges are like a job board or like a messaging board in which everyone can see every post and that it's all available to everyone. What we are educating our customers in is that the loads that they post can only be seen by TSR carriers. There's no way for any of their competition, for any of the other people within the exchange to see what loads are posted, which means that there is the highest level of visibility security. And the only people who can see it are certified TSR carriers whose identity is verified by TAPA and ourselves.
Thorsten, you talked about, but both of you have talked about the great feedback and great response that you've had. But of course, the Certified Carrier Exchange for TAPA TSR certified transport providers, and based on the TAPA standards and intelligence, is going to make lots of sense to the association's manufacturer and LSP members. But this initiative is only going to really work if it gains sufficient support. What does that sufficient support look like? And what is your message to TAPA certified operators that think, oh, well, maybe I'll just wait and see how the exchange takes shape before they commit themselves?
The biggest point here is, one of the strongest pillars within the TAPA Europe, Middle East, and Africa Association and TAPA globally is really the networking opportunity. And the great news is, when we have something like the new certified carrier exchange platform, the word will spread within the TAPA community faster than we can believe. So even if you are not joining right now, but I'm pretty sure that you will hear from your peers or your competitors using the certified carrier exchange platform already, that if they love it, they will come back to you. So, of course, some of them will still have a kind of, oh, no, let's wait, until they have the first hiccups or whatever. But at the end of the day, I strongly believe that this will be a success and you will see more and more TAPA certified operators jumping on it.
And Matt, maybe you can tell us a bit more about kind of the level of critical mass the certified carrier exchange is going to need to achieve a long-term sustainability.
So for us, when we take a look at the long run needs of the exchange, we want to make sure that there's a good balance between load providers and those who are TSR certified carriers. Within that balance, the goal of this is not to be processing millions of shipments through the exchange directly. The goal is to cover those needs where we need secure transport for one specific shipment to get started. So we have maybe a short run target where we have good velocity within the exchange, a few thousand loads per day, in a mix of both TSR required freight and freight that may not require a TSR certification. When we take a look at that, though, as long as the balance between carriers and load providers stays relatively even, the long run sustainability is actually met from day one. So right now we're able to bid as long as we're within those same market areas. Load providers are getting a handful of bids on each shipment that they're posting, or at least some type of engagement and discussion, which means that as long as those certified users are using it on a regular basis, the platform can kind of grow organically as additional shippers and forwarders and TAPA members become accustomed to the concept and are able to continue to grow and invite those they do business with directly onto the exchange. If you think about it today, if you're an existing TAPA member who, when you don't have a shipment covered, you're sending out 10 emails to 10 different carriers that you know are certified. Within the exchange, you can send it out to an even wider pool of carriers that you trust with a tenth of the effort, being able to create that shipment, do all the negotiation and transaction directly within the exchange. And that gives you an opportunity to be more efficient and work with more trusted parties. And so I think it's just helping kind of shift that perspective around it. But as long as we see balance within the ecosystem, we expect to see kind of continued growth and long-term sustainability.
And talking about growth, Thorsten, presumably TAPA EMEA hopes that this successful certified carrier exchange is also going to grow the number of TSR certifications, particularly in Europe, given, I suppose, the added commercial opportunities that being TAPA certified can offer. Do you think that's a possibility? And also, how is this going to fit in with the new revision of TAPA's TSR requirements, which are going live in September?
Yeah, I think first of all, the certified freight exchange is giving now an opportunity to, first of all, to non-TAPA members, but also to companies which are not having a TSR certified partner, because it's really opening the door to a by far bigger world right now. So that's the big opportunity for TAPA to really also drive for constant growth. And the new revision is ready on the 15th of September. And the team is working hard behind the scene already. You will receive a lot of communication within the next couple of weeks with due dates, with release dates, with when is the next training available, and so on and so on. Everything is ready. Everything will be ready on the 15th of September. And last but not least, why are TAPA standards reviewed every 3 years? It's very easy. The world is changing, the risk is changing, technology is changing, OCGs are changing, criminals are changing, and therefore we need to adjust. We need to be better. We need to be stronger. And we also need to adjust and accept new technology. As we do not accept it, freight exchange for 20 years, now we accept it. And if you look at the modern technology, if you look at AI and everything, you also see that this will be maybe not in this revision, but I'm pretty sure latest in the next revision, you will also see something what is linked to AI.
Matt, with the network of 44,000 verified transport partners, forwarders and shippers, that's a huge audience of potential new members for TAPA EMEA, and that could help drive wider adoption of the TAPA supply chain security standards. How else can you help to bring TAPA EMEA to your network's attention?
Certainly. And this partnership goes beyond the certified carrier exchange. With our positioning as the safest exchange in Europe, we want our customers to have access to the highest level of security available, and that is just synonymous directly with TAPA EMEA. And so when we are able to funnel those like-minded companies directly to TAPA, it helps kind of raise the overall bar within the industry. And so for us, what we do is, we have some planned marketing activities with the TAPA team to help kind of drive a lot of our hauliers and a lot of our customers who are asking to be able to support some of this higher security freight. The market is growing. The demand is very much available, particularly as theft continues to rise within Europe. And so we see that our customers who are willing to make the investment or have already made the investment are looking for ways to monetize the investment they've made in their trailers, in their security practices, and within their personnel. So for us, this is not just an opportunity for the exchange, it's an opportunity to strengthen TAPA's message and continue to drive a wider adoption of these security practices within the industry.
And Thorsten, if a company is listening to us today and they're not a member of TAPA EMEA, but they would like to be TAPA certified in order to join the Certified Carrier Exchange, is this possible, and what should they do? And why should they actually become members too?
Yeah, so first of all, also non-TAPA members can be certified, so that's really quite important because we are an open industry standard. We are a non-profit industry association, so everybody can become certified. But I think what is quite important, a member is having significant opportunities and benefits compared to a non-member. So the first thing what I would say is, come to us, contact us, and we will provide you a lot of details, because it's always better to be a proactive member than really to jump on something where you have no clue what are you really doing. So we are here to support, and we are here really to provide you the guidance to become really a very successful TAPA certified carrier.
Did you know TAPA EMEA is the fastest growing supply chain security network in the EMEA region? We connect manufacturers, logistics operators, insurers, security systems providers, parking places, and law enforcement agencies, all with a single goal: to reduce the risk of cargo crime. Our network is totally TAPAized. You can be too. Contact us now at info@tapaemea.org and ask what we can do for your business.
And just as we start to finish, Matt, what kind of key questions have you been having as feedback from companies about the Certified Carrier Exchange? What are the kind of key questions or concerns or?
Yeah, I think it's been pretty consistent in a desire to understand how to operate within a freight exchange. For the first time in 25 years, some of these companies are accessing new technology, which requires a great deal of education and trust to be built from day one. The second piece is in terms of like the structure of the agreement and how we do business. And so for our new users, we've made it available to them for 3 months for free. So this gives them an opportunity to get into the exchange, get comfortable with it, begin to use it, and have an understanding of what the solution can do for them before making that annual commitment. And I think that a lot of customers have asked us to kind of walk through how they can best stand out within the exchange. So what we find is that loads that are posted, for example, in the morning are those that get the most traction because by the afternoon, the majority of that capacity has already been allocated. It's little tips and tricks like that that our hands-on customer success team are helping guide new customers to use to make sure that they can kind of accelerate their experience within the freight exchange, accelerate the value that they can get from it, and move quickly to be able to leverage all that the certified carrier exchange has to offer.
And is there an urgency around that 3-month free trial?
For new customers, anyone who signs up here before the end of the year will be given a 3-month free trial. That way they ensure that they can understand the exchange, see the velocity as it moves through, and have faith that it can deliver value for their business. So as long as we can work with them before the end of the year, that period will be available to them.
And just finally, as a sort of closing piece from you both, Thorsten, I've been involved with TAPA EMEA long enough to know that you are always striving for new innovations and new collaborations. I think your catchphrase is more to come. So this feels like a particularly innovative and exciting partnership, though. So you must be feeling really excited about it and the future possibilities.
I am, absolutely. And I'm super excited because for me, this is a perfect example on a win-win situation. So we opened the door for Trans.eu whilst they opened the door for TAPA, and that's really something where I must say over the last 18 months where we worked together on this kind of really partnership, but also new solution, we really found something where I strongly believe, we are going to the right direction and we provide something to the members and to the entire industry, which is not there so far. So nevertheless, as you said it, behind the scene, we are also working on more and more to come.
And Matt, finally, if you dream big, what could the certified carrier exchange achieve?
Yeah, I have maybe a big dream that's a bit boring and a little dream that's a bit more granular. The big dream is that it's a bit business oriented, but we continue to see growth and success within this from customers who say they're able to find new carriers who can transport their goods securely. And I think that this gives the carriers an opportunity to monetize their certification and for shippers to have new capacity to cover their loads in peak seasons or when new loads pop up. So I think that's the big dream. The smaller dream, though, and I think what gives me the most conviction in the solution is when I think about the users. And I imagine that there is a dispatcher at a forwarder or a planner at a shipper today who has a load that's picking up tonight. And this load is maybe finished goods. Maybe it needs to be on the shelf in 24 or 48 hours. And their existing carrier can't cover the load. I was in freight forwarding for 8 years. I've experienced this. And maybe it's a breakdown, it's a lightning strike. I once had a driver run over their own dog, allegedly. There's a drama. They're unable to access their current carrier. And instead of calling the carrier they know, they take a risk today. Maybe they have to send it with a truck without a TSR certification, or they ask their security manager if there can be a one-time exception. And this creates risk. This creates those vectors that we don't want to have. And so I guess my smaller dream on a user level is when I think of that dispatcher, think of that planner, that they can calmly log into Trans.eu, access the certified carrier exchange, post the load to a trusted capacity, and get an offer from someone who can solve their problem without all the cortisol, without all the drama, without too many escalations. And for me, when I dream big or dream small, that is what I think that this exchange can do. And that is what we see take place already today.
Well, it's such an exciting moment, and we are looking forward to seeing how that develops. And I know we'll be hearing more about it. So thank you, Thorsten and Matt, for such a great discussion. Loads for our listeners to take away with them. And as I said, looking forward to see how the Certified Carrier Exchange progresses. Well, that's all for this episode of TAPA Talks. But if you enjoyed listening, please do follow us and share with your network. And Thorsten, I know you love people getting in touch.
Yeah, absolutely. Through email, LinkedIn, whatever you want to say, here it's very important. And, we need to understand from you what you want to hear from us. So therefore, connect, come to us and let us know what you want to hear.
Well, thank you to everybody for listening today, and do join us next time on TAPA Talks, when we'll be taking a deep dive into the new TIS 2.0 and also taking a peek behind the curtains at how TAPA EMEA is adapting as it grows. Until next time.
Thanks to Matt. Thanks to Sam. Another great TAPA Talk. Looking forward to the next time and talk to you soon. Thank you.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thanks for listening to TAPA Talks. Quick heads up, the next episode is one you'll want to hear the moment it drops. Follow or subscribe now so you are up to date and not catching up later. Till then, stay taperized.